Emotional territorial circuit. The second circuit, the emotional territorial networks of the brain, is concerned entirely with power politics. This patriotic circuit is built into all vertebrates and is perhaps 500 million to 1,000 million years old. In the modern human, seems to be centralized in the thalamus, the back brain or old brain, and is linked with the voluntary nervous system and the muscles. This circuit appears in each newborn when the DNA master tape sends out RNA messenger molecules to trigger the mutation from neonate to toddler, which involves first of all standing erect, walking, mastering gravity, overcoming physical obstacles, and learning to manipulate others politically are the vulnerable points at which imprinting and heavy conditioning occur. The muscles that perform these power functions are quickly programmed with what become chronic, lifelong reflexes. Depending as always the accidents of the environment, what happens at points of neurological vulnerability, this circuit will organize itself into a strong dominating role in the pack or family, or a weak submissive role. Without going into the jungles with the ethologists, one can observe this mammalian imprinting process in any litter of puppies. It is very quickly determined who is top dog and who is bottom dog. Status in a pack or tribe is assigned on the basis of a preverbal signaling system in which these muscle reflexes are crucial. All of the emotional games or cons listed in the popular psychological game manuals of Dr. Eric Berne and the transaction analyst are second circuit imprints or standard mammalian politics. To quote from my novel Schrödinger's Cat, most of the domesticated primates of Terra did not know they were primates. They thought they were something apart from and superior to the rest of the planet. Even Benny Benedict's 1 month to go column was based on that illusion. Benny had actually read Darwin once, in college a long time ago, and he had heard of sciences like ethology and ecology, but the facts of evolution had never really registered on him. He never thought of himself as a primate. He never realized his friends and associates were primates. Above all, he never understood that the alpha males of Unistat were typical leaders of primate bands. As a result of this inability to see the obvious, Benny was constantly alarmed and terrified by the behavior of himself, his friends and associates, and especially the alpha males of the pack. Since he didn't know it was ordinary primate behavior, it seemed just awful to him. Since a great deal of primate behavior was considered just awful, most of the domesticated primates spent most of their time trying to conceal what they were doing. Some of the primates got caught by other primates. All of the primates lived in dread of getting caught. Those who got caught were called no good shits. The term no good shit was a deep expression of primate psychology. For instance, one wild primate, a chimpanzee, taught sign language by 2 domesticated primate scientists, spontaneously put together the signs for shit and scientist to describe a scientist she didn't like. She was calling him shit scientist. She also put together the signs for shit and chimpanzee for another chimpanzee she didn't like. She was calling him shit chimpanzee. You no good shit, domesticated primates often said to each other. This metaphor was deep in primate psychology because primates mark their territories with excretions, and sometimes they threw excretions at each other when disputing over territories. One primate wrote a long book describing in vivid detail how his political enemies should be punished. He imagined them in an enormous hole in the ground with flames and smoke and rivers of shit. This primate was named Dante Alighieri. Another primate wrote that every primate infant goes through a stage of being chiefly concerned with biosurvival, for example, food and mommy's titty. He called this the oral stage. He said the infant next went on to a stage of learning mammalian politics, for example, recognizing the father, alpha male, and his authority and territorial demands. He called this with an insight that few primates shared, the anal stage. This primate was named Freud. He had taken his own nervous system apart and examined its component circuits by periodically altering its structure with neurochemicals. Among the anal insults exchanged by domesticated primates when fighting for their space were up your ass, go shit in your head, you're full of shit, and many others. One of the most admired alpha males in the kingdom of the Franks was General Cambronne. General Cambronne won this adulation for the answer he gave when asked to surrender at Waterloo. Merde was the answer General Cambronne gave. The word petard means a kind of bomb. It comes from the same Old English root as fart. General Cambronne's mentality was typical of the alpha males of the military caste. When primates went to war or got violent in other ways, they always said they were about to knock the shit out of the enemy. They also spoke of dumping on each other. The standard authority reflex on the emotional territorial circuit is to swell the muscles and howl. You will find this among birds as well as mammals and in the board meeting of your local bank. The standard submission reflex is to shrink the muscles, lower the head, and crawl away. You will find this among dogs, primates, fallen employees who wish to keep their jobs everywhere. If the first biosurvival circuit is chiefly imprinted by the mother, the second emotional territorial circuit is chiefly imprinted by the father, the nearest alpha male. It has been proposed by sociologist G. Rattray Taylor that societies swing back and forth between mattress periods in which motherly oral values predominate and patrous periods in which fatherly anal values are in ascendance. Taylor's table of the characteristics of these mattress and patrous periods is as follows. Mattress, permissive toward sex, freedom for women, women have high status, chastity not valued, egalitarian, progressive, no distrust of research, spontaneous, sex differences minimized, fear of incest, hedonic, mother goddess. Patrous, restrictive toward sex, limitation of freedom for women, women have low status, chastity highly valued, authoritarian, conservative, distrust of research, inhibitions, sex differences maximized, fear of homosexuality, ascetic, father god. Whether or not societies wobble between these extremes, as Taylor claims, individuals certainly do. These are merely the consequences of A. having the heaviest imprint on the oral mattress biosurvival circuit, or B. having the heaviest imprint on the anal patrous territorial circuit. In pre-ethological terms, the emotional territorial circuit is what we usually call ego. Ego is simply the mammalian recognition of one's status in the pack. It is a role, as sociologists say, a single brain circuit which mistakes itself for the whole self, the entire brain-mind apparatus. The egotist behaves like a 2-year-old in the common saying because ego is the imprint of the toddling and toilet training stage. The question of how human an animal is, especially a pet dog or cat, never ceases to divide scientists from laypersons and one scientist from another. In terms of the present theory, the differences between domesticated primates as humans and other domesticated animals are virtually nil, as long as we are talking only about the first two circuits. Since most people spend most of their time on these primitive circuits, the differences are often much less obvious than the similarities. Real differences begin to appear when the third semantic circuit enters the picture. For instance, novice dog trainers always make the mistake of using too many words, because the dog is so human in so many ways. Canines, like primates, are great mimics. The novice imputes too much humanity to them. The average dog has a vocabulary of around 150 words, and within that semantic universe is quite bright. It is very easy to teach a dog the meaning of sit, stay, attack, etc., and the dog will learn the meaning of walk and foot, even without your trying to teach him. The problem begins when the novice expects the dog to understand something like, no, Fritz, anywhere else in the bedroom but not on the bed. Even a non-English speaking human would not grasp that except vaguely. The dog gives up on such sentences and guesses what he can from your mammalian and unconscious body language. Understanding these distinctions can vastly improve primate-canine communication. For instance, my wife, a sociologist, trained our dog, Fang, not to beg at the table in the most direct mammalian language possible. She simply growled at him. the first few times he approached her while she was eating. She had been reading ethology, of course. Feng understood fully. He soon learned to avoid the table while the pack leaders, my wife and myself, were eating. His genetic programs told him we were the big dogs, or as close to the big dogs as he could find in that environment. Dogs, like wolves, have a genetic program about not annoying the big dogs while they're eating. The girl told him all he needed to know about the local parameters of that rule. Feng, incidentally, was a Dachshund Labrador mix and strange looking to most humans. People would stop me on the street while I was walking him and ask, "What is that?" Persons, extreme cases, who take the heaviest imprint on this territorial emotional circuit tend to be musculotonic. That is, they hold most of their attention and energy in the muscular attack defense systems and grow up medium weight, heavy enough to be hard to knock down, light enough to be quick and sinewy. Often they become bodybuilders, weightlifters, etc., and have an extraordinary absorption in demonstrating their strength. Even shaking hands with them, you get the message that they're not exchanging empty but demonstrating power. Most societies shunt these types into the military, where their propensities are put to proper ethological use, defending the tribal turf. The anal orientation of this circuit explains the oddity of military speech first noted by Norman Mailer. As means one's whole self, and shit means all surrounding circumstance. The sanguinary type friendly strength was identified with the lion archetype and element fire. The lion, because of the dignity of these big cats, represents good strength, and the fire represents power. Phlegmatic type, friendly weakness, was identified with the angel archetype and the element water. These people are too sensitive to fight and go with the flow. The choleric types were identified with the bull archetype, suspicion, paranoia, and the element earth, standing for sluggish pseudo-stupidity. This is a traditional stance of defeated races dealing with their conquerors. The bilious types, hostile strength, were identified with the eagle archetype, symbol of imperial Rome, the German royal family, etc. And the element air probably means sky because these types seem high and mighty. These symbols go back a long way. Kabbalists find them in the Old Testament, where indeed the lion, angel, bull, eagle appear in Ezekiel. They are found constantly in Catholic art, associated with the four evangelists, Matthew angel, Mark lion, Luke bull, John eagle, and run all through the design of tarot card decks, medieval and modern. In the clever language of the fashionable transactional analysis system, these four imprint types are categorized as the four basic life scripts, to wit: bilious, hostile strength, I'm okay, you're not okay; sanguinary, friendly strength, I'm okay, you're okay; choleric, hostile weakness, I'm not okay, you're not okay; phlegmatic, friendly weakness, I'm not okay, you're okay. It is the phlegmatic, friendly weakness, dependent, neurotic type who generally turn up in the psychotherapist's office seeking reimprinting voluntarily. They're not okay, but they have great faith that the therapist is okay. The bilious, hostile strength and choleric, hostile weakness arrive in therapy, if at all, only because their associates or families, or more commonly a low court, has ordered them to try to reimprint their compulsive hostilities. The sanguinary, friendly strength type virtually never comes for psychotherapy. He or she is satisfied with his or her life, and so is the rest of society. Else they nonetheless can get to the position where they need therapy of some sort, simply because they may take on too much responsibility and carry too many burdens. They will generally arrive at the therapist only if sent there by an MD who has intuited where their ulcers came from. This system is not meant to be rigid or to imply that there are only 4 types of humanoid robots. The later circuits, still to be discussed, modify all this considerably, Some imprints are wobbly, cover 2 or more quadrants partly, and we are all capable of sudden brain change. It is also important to realize that the 4 archetypes are for convenience only, and they're convenient as witness their reappearance in transactional analysis, where their historical connection with lion, angel, bull, eagle isn't even recognized. But each quadrant can be subdivided much more sharply if necessary for diagnostic purposes. For instance, the most widely used psychological test in this country, the Leary Interpersonal Grid, 1957, divides the 4 quadrants into 16 subquadrants and allows one to grade each in terms of moderate to excessive tendency to behave that way. In the grid on which the Leary categories are drawn, the moderate imprints are in toward the center, and the excessive or extreme cases are out toward the perimeter. But what is being measured is still basically the way the first 2 circuits, oral, biosurvival, and anal territorial, are imprinted. To clarify this a bit further, imagine that 4 babies were all born at the same instant in John J. Boskowitz Memorial Hospital, any town, planet Earth. We come back 20 years later, and we find that each of them has a separate personality and lifestyle, a problem for the astrologers, but let that pass. To make things easier for us, they have actually landed in our 4 quadrants. Subject 1 is responsible over conventional, sanguinary. Everybody agrees that he, she, or he is usually a beloved community leader, helpful, considerate, friendly, and solidly successful. Some may even say he, she spoils people with kindness, forgives anything, agrees with everybody, and actually enjoys governing those who cannot govern themselves. The noble lion. This person may be, and probably is, a total robot. That is, if he can never give orders in a strict way, is never able to doubt others, is never ego-centered, etc., then she or he has mechanically imprinted the first quadrant, friendly strength. On the other hand, if he or she is able to move out of the first quadrant in appropriate situations, exercising hostility against the marauder or predator, admitting weakness when overwhelmed, he or she has an imprinted conditioned predilection for I'm okay, you're okay, but is not totally robotized by it. Chapter 5. Dickens enjoys the 2-circuit dialectic. The shock and dismay of the infant when the harshness of traditional toilet training introduces the anal petrous 2nd circuit values into the previously blissful oral mattress continuum is conveyed with great artistry in Dickens's David Copperfield. So over is this sequence indeed that it is hard to believe it was actually written half a century before Freud's clinical writings. Dickens describes an idyllic infanthood in which David lives with a widowed mother who can safely be characterized as a human embodiment of the bonne Dea, good goddess of the ancients, who lingers still as the fairy godmother in children's tales. Onto this happy scene intrudes the horrible stepfather, Mr. Murdstone, whose Jehovah complex makes him an avatar of the punishing father god. There is no way of obeying all of Murdstone's rules. There are too many of them, and they are mostly unstated and implicit anyway. David undergoes some monumental lashings on the buttocks for his own good, of course, although Dickens emphasizes in a quiet Freudian way the obvious enjoyment Murdstone obtains from these sessions. Quite naturally, David begins to internalize this anal system of values and imagines he's quite a guilty little wretch and richly deserves this torture. Then Dickens inserts the following scene when David returns from a year at school. I went in with quite timid step. God knows how infantile the memory may have been that was awakened in me at the sound of my mother's voice in the old parlor when I set foot in the hall. I think I must have laid in her arms and heard her singing to me when I was but a baby. The strain was new to me, but was so old that it filled my heart brimful like a friend come back from a long absence. I believed from the solitary and thoughtful way in which my mother murmured her song that she was alone, and I went softly into the room. She was sitting by the fire, suckling an infant whose tiny hand she held against her neck. Her eyes were looking down upon his face, and she sat singing to it. I was so far right that she had no other companion. I spoke to her, and she started and cried out, but seeing me, she called me her dear Davy, her own boy, and coming halfway across the room to meet me, kneeled down upon the ground and kissed me, and laid my head down on her bosom near the little creature that was nestling there, and put its hand up to my lips. I wish I had died. I wish I had died then, with that feeling in my heart. I should have been more fit for heaven than I have ever been since. The dream of return to oral biosecurity is too over to require commentary. Similarly, in Joyce's monumental novel of The Mind of a Man Asleep, Finnegan's Wake, the father and the father god are always associated with war and excretion, as Joyce scholar William York Tyndall has noted. As Gun the Father, the terrifying anal monster combines pistol, deity, and flatulence as the Lord of Israel. He is the jealous, territorial Old Testament Lord of Hosts, for example, of battles. His insignia, the 100-letter thunder word, which recurs 10 times in the dream, always combines fatherhood, menace, defecation, and war, for instance, in its first appearance on page 1. Here we find Baba, Arabic father, phonetic Abba, Hebrew father, phonetic Cambron, the general who so appropriately said Merde when asked to surrender the territory, phonetic Gaelic scan, crack of thunder or of the anus, Ronen, Germanic excretion, the suggestive, or then, implying both Germanic medal for valor and English ordor, etc., the terrifying father god elsewhere makes his maneuvers in open ordor and preaches all the anal authoritarian values. No gods before me, thou shalt not commit idolatry, love my label like myself. He is the villain of the garden party, the trickster god who set the baited trap in the Garden of Eden, the ego internalized in toilet training, Poti, the god of thunder and wrath, god Din. Fleeing him, the inhabitants of earth always seek his opposite. ALP, German, dream, also the root of the first letters of the Greek and Hebrew alphabets, Alpha and Aleph, the source, the beginning. Anna Livia Pluribella, when her name is written in full, the waters of life combine with all beautiful women. She is as oral and loving as the omnibus is anal and threatening. With a beak, with a spring, all her real ringlets shaken, rock drops in her taichi, tramp tokens in her hair, all waved to a point, and then all innuendation, little old-fashioned mummy, little wonderful mummy, ducking under bridges, as happy as the day is wet, babbling, bubbling, chattering to herself, deluding the fields. This amniotic river woman is the perfect mother of infantile dream memory and the great goddess of the ancients, the ideal bio-survival safe, warm place, and to her Joyce offers his most fervent prayer. In the name of Anna, the Almaziful, the ever-living, the bringer of pluralities, hallowed be her eve, her sing-time song, her will be one, unhemmed as it is uneven. Humanity, in Joyce's view, as in Rattray Taylor's, is forever leaving her to follow the hero, father, to the battlefield of Waterloo, with blood and excrement superimposed to reveal the anal territorial roots of war, and then returning temporarily chastened to list as she bids us by the waters of Babylon. In Chapter 3 of Finnegan's Wake, the offenders, invaders, and defenders, natives, get so thoroughly mixed up that all that remains is a composite fender who takes the blame for everybody. This cyclical view of history, whether in Joyce, Rattray Taylor, Vico, Joyce's source, Hegel and Marx, etc., is only part of the truth but needs to be stressed because it is the part that most people fearfully refuse to recognize. Whether we speak in terms of Taylor's matris-patris dialectic, Vico's cycle of divine, heroic, and urbanized ages, the Marx-Hegel trinity of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, or any variation thereon, we are speaking of a pattern that is real and that does repeat. But it only does so to the extent that people are robotized, trapped in hardwired reflexes. When the accumulated facts, gimmicks, tools, techniques, and gadgets of neuroscience, the science of brain change and brain liberation, reaches a certain critical mass, we will all be able to free ourselves from these robot cycles. It is the thesis of this book that we have been approaching that critical mass for several decades now and will reach the crossover point faster than you expect. The current rampages of territorial emotional pugnacity sweeping this planet are not just another civilization falling Vico fashion. They are the birth pangs of a cosmic Prometheus rising out of the long nightmare of domesticated primate history. Of course, these are genetic historical generalizations which do not precisely match any specific family. The gracious goddess hostile giant archetypes are not activated in cases where the mother is cold, rejecting, embittered, etc., and the father is the warm, supportive figure. The imprints on the first and second circuits are statistically deviant in such families, and anything may result: a shaman, a schizophrenic, a genius, a homosexual, an artist, a psychologist, etc.